political studies and elsewhere too, they all say that the Brexit decision is going to have a material and damaging effect on the UK economy. How can you be so sure they're wrong?
Well, I'm not. Actually, my reason for voting for Brexit was not because I thought it was going to be better for the English economy than Remain. There are good arguments that there can be a certain amount of damage to the economy from leaving an institutional structure like the European Union. My main reason for voting for Brexit was, I suppose I call myself the Groucho Marxist question. I'm in a club, do I want to be here? And the answer was no, because I think the EU is an incredibly, not only an effective club, but a dangerous club for the health of Europe. And it's going to fall apart at some stage. It might as well start with a polite exit by the English rather than a rude one by the French.
Well, for a start, we should say the British, not the English.
Sorry about that.
And that's okay.
I'm still learning.
But the point is this, you know, we look at the impact of Brexit, we see, and all the surveys show it, from business confidence to investment decisions, we see already that the impact of uncertainty is quite profound, and that all of the growth forecasts for the future have been downsized. Britain is going to suffer as a result.
It's having some pain. I mean, some of that pain is necessary. A large part of it is you need to unwind the housing bubble you've got here, which is as bad as the one that I come from back in Sydney. There are elements like that that have to happen. But in terms of the current impact, it's all upon uncertainty. Now, are we trying to say we were certain before Brexit and uncertain after? It's the age of uncertainty on that front.
Well, there are certain certainties that we lived with and that actually the British economy benefited from. One was the single market. It meant tariff-free trade right across the European Union.
That's hugely important, because now if we actually negotiate the same deal the Americans have, we go from having no tariff whatsoever.
Yeah, but you said if, and that's the nature of the uncertainty. You've said very confidently, I'm sure that we're going to get, if we go into a sort of third-party deal with the European Union, I'm sure we're going to get a great tariff agreement with them, and indeed with the rest of the world too. How can it comes back to the credibility of economists. How can you be sure?
No, because tariff wars used to be a big issue back in the 50s and 60s. And one thing my anti-profession has done is demolish tariff walls around the world. Tariffs used to average 30%. You know what the average tariff is between the America and the European Union now? 2%.
You know what the likely tariff is if we go to this third-party status on cars, for example? One of the most important exports from the UK, at least 10%. 10% on the price of a car is a really big deal.
And our currency has fallen by 15 and 20%. There are ups and downs in both of these processes, and a large part of what's happened to England in the last 30 or so years, certainly in comparison to Germany, is a deindustrialisation of the country. Now, partly that's because you've had an overvalued exchange rate, in my opinion. That exchange rate plunged after Brexit and is likely to remain low. So, yes, you're going to face maybe a tariff on cars of 10%, but you're looking at a general reduction in your export prices of 20%. So there are swings and roundabouts here which weren't taken account of by the mainstream.
Look at the way the British economy works. I mean, a very significant chunk of national GDP comes from the City of London, from the financial sector, banking, insurance, and all the rest that goes with it. There are significant institutions like Deutsche Bank who are already saying they are fundamentally reviewing their investment commitment, strategic commitment to the UK because of the Brexit decision. Financial services are going to take a real hit.
Not as big as people make out, because the main reason that the financial sector is located here is, number one, the language you and I are both using. English is the language of international trade. It won't become German or French or Italian or anything else in the meantime. Also, most contracts are negotiated in English law, and that's a major strength that the financial sector gets out of locating here that it won't get in Frankfurt. Now, they'll talk about it. They're good at talking up how deadly the world's going to be ruined if they leave the country tomorrow. The financial sector is very good at causing a panic. But in fact, making a final action, deciding to move all their facilities from here to Frankfurt, no, I can't see that happening. I can see them changing the weighting, but that's
they're business people,
stuff.
And they have to take seriously the words that come out of Paris, for example, or the words that come out of the mouth of the German finance minister, Wolfgang Schäuble. These are people in Europe who are saying, look, apart from anything else, to ensure the stabilisation of the rest of the European Union, to ensure we stay together, we have to send a very clear message about Britain that if you leave, you suffer the consequences.
And look what they've done to Greece and Spain. That is not the behaviour of a democratic system. That is authoritarian behaviour.
Well, you can call it what you like, but you're not a politician, you're an economist. You have to calculate.
I'm not going to be an economic Chamberlain.
What do you mean?
I'm not going to be somebody who says we have to stay there for the sake of peace in our time and lock ourselves into a policy system which is actually causing the collapse of Europe. That's what the European Union, in particular the euro, is doing. The sooner the euro is ended, the better for the state of the global economy, and as painful as it will be in transition, the better it will be for the countries of Europe.
Just a final point on Europe, and then we'll move on. But one of your best friends in the world of economic thinking is the former Greek finance minister, Yanis Varoufakis. I've had him in the studio, and he said, you know what, clearly I have a lot of problems with the European Union, but I still think fundamentally it would be the wrong and a dangerous decision for the UK to leave the European Union.
That's where Yanis and I differ on a political front rather than economic. Yanis has got a tendency, and I admire him for it, trying to find ways that currently dysfunctional systems can be made to work. That's what he tried to do with what he called his modest proposal for reforming the euro, which, if it had been taken on board, would have been far, far better for Greece and for most of Europe than what actually was done. I just don't think you can persuade Wolfgang Schäuble to think outside the ordoliberal framework he's inside. And it's like telling somebody, reform a marriage from inside. Don't leave your husband, persuade him not to bash you anymore. I'm sorry, from what you're even saying here is they're going to bash us more if we try to leave, so let's not leave. That is a very failed strategy for the long term if you're going to continue getting bashed as a result of staying where you are.
And your analysis is that the European Union, and in particular the Eurozone, are absolutely doomed. No question in your mind.
I believe so. And going right back to Wynne Godley, another classic contrarian English economist, who wrote in 1992 that given the way the euro has been defined, the only outcome is going to be immigration as an alternative to starvation or death. Now, he wrote that in 1992 when the ink was still drying on the Maastricht Treaty, and people would have seen him as a complete extremist. That is one of the most prescient articles ever written. That's the state we're in now. I'm simply carrying on from Wynne Godley's work and saying we should never have joined, the euro should never have been created, let's decreate it.
Funnily enough, while you predict meltdown for the European Union, that isn't the real driver of your conviction that